The sterile hum of the hospital room filled my ears, blending with the rhythmic beeping of Emma's heart monitor. I sat in the stiff vinyl chair next to her bed, watching her chest rise and fall in shallow, fragile breaths. The overhead lights buzzed softly, casting a pale glow over the room. Tubes ran from her arms, the IV drip steadily feeding fluids into veins that seemed too thin, too delicate. Her skin was so pale, almost translucent, like a sheet of paper you could see through if you held it to the light. Emma, my little girl. I reached for her hand, careful not to disturb the monitors, and felt the bones beneath her skin, sharp and fragile. 15 years old, and she should have been out with friends complaining about algebra homework or rolling her eyes at my dad jokes. Instead, she was lying here week after week, growing thinner, sicker, and no one, not the pediatrician, not the specialists, not even the so-called experts at Mount Carmel East, had any answers. Dad, her voice cracked barely above a whisper, so faint I almost thought I'd imagined it. I leaned in, heart thudding in my chest. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Her eyes fluttered open, glassy and unfocused, but then they snapped to mine, a flash of desperate clarity breaking through the haze. She licked her dry lips, struggling to form words. Please, she rasped, and I had to lean closer, my ear almost to her mouth. Please, don't leave me alone with her. My blood ran cold. My heart jackhammered in my chest. I glanced across the room, and there she was. Allison, my wife, sitting in the visitor's chair, scrolling on her phone like she was bored out of her mind, like none of this mattered. Her dark hair was pulled into a neat bun, her makeup flawless despite the late hour. She looked up, caught me watching, and flashed a tight, practiced smile. The kind of smile you'd use on a client or a stranger at the grocery store. The kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. What is it, baby? She asked, standing up and smoothing the front of her blouse. Her voice had that tone, sweet on the surface, but there was something underneath it, like the sharp edge of a blade. Emma's hand gripped mine so tight her fingers trembled. Her eyes darted from me to Allison, then back again, pleading silently. I forced a smile, though my stomach twisted into knots. It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here. I brushed a lock of hair off her forehead and tried to steady my breathing. Emma, I said gently, can you tell me what's wrong? Her lips parted, but she winced as she shifted, like every movement hurt. Then almost imperceptibly, she tilted her head toward her shoulder. I understood the unspoken message. I helped her sit up slightly, careful not to jostle the IV lines, and slowly, so slowly, eased the back of her hospital gown aside. My breath caught in my throat. Bruises. Deep, dark, angry bruises shaped like fingerprints. Long, purpling marks ran down from her shoulder blades, fading into yellow and green as they wrapped around her ribs. A burn red and raw, the distinct outline of a belt buckle, marked the small of her back like a brand. I swallowed hard, my vision narrowing. My military training, 15 years of staying calm under fire of managing chaos, kicked in like a reflex, but inside a cold fury began to spread, steady and sure. I let the gown fall back into place, smoothing it down as if that could erase what I'd seen. How long, Emma? My voice was low, careful, steady. I didn't want to scare her more than she already was. She looked away, tears welling in her eyes. I tried to tell you, Dad, but Allison's voice cut in, too quick, too smooth. Is everything okay over there? She asked, stepping forward, her phone still in her hand, like it was an accessory. Her voice dripped with concern, the kind you could bottle and sell. Emma flinched, subtle, but I caught it. I stood up, shielding my daughter with my body. I'm getting the nurse, I said, keeping my tone level, as if I wasn't barely holding it together. I pressed the call button, holding it down until the light flashed. Allison's eyes narrowed. Tom, she's just confused. The medication, she's been so tired, so disoriented. You know that. Let's have the doctors check her out, I said, just to be safe. A nurse appeared in the doorway, a young woman with tired eyes and a calm voice. Is there a problem, Mr. Walker? I turned to her. My voice clipped professional. My daughter has bruises that weren't here yesterday. I want a doctor in here now, and I want security called. And I want the police. The room went still. Thank you all for listening to the story. If you enjoyed it, please give me a subscription. Allison's voice rose sharp now, a little too shrill. This is insane, Tom. She fell down the stairs. You know how clumsy she's been lately. I kept my eyes on the nurse. Call security. Please. The nurse nodded, her face pale. She pressed her own call button. Security to room 314. Police requested. Emma clung to my hand, tears slipping down her cheeks. Her fingers trembled in mine, but I squeezed back, steady, unyielding. I wasn't leaving. Not now, not ever. The hospital room felt colder the next morning, like someone had turned down the thermostat overnight. The sun peeked through the blinds in thin, tired stripes. Emma was asleep, her breathing shallow but steady, while nurses moved quietly in and out, checking vitals, adjusting IV bags. I sat by her bedside, exhaustion pulling at me, but I couldn't leave. I wouldn't. I leaned back in the chair, rubbing a hand over my face, feeling the grit of unshaven stubble under my palm. My mind replayed the images from last night over and over, the bruises, the burns, the sheer terror in Emma's eyes. I had seen fear before in combat zones halfway around the world, but nothing cut me deeper than the way my daughter looked at me, like I was her last hope. I needed answers. I needed proof. And then I remembered Emma's backpack. It was tucked in the corner near the closet where a nurse had shoved it when they brought her in. I stood across the room and knelt down, unzipping the bag carefully. Inside were the usual things: a water bottle, some crumpled homework, a few pencils, a hairbrush tangled with strands of her hair. And then I saw it, a battered sketchbook, edges worn soft from use. I pulled it out and flipped it open, sitting back in the chair as I turned the pages. At first it was innocent stuff: flowers, animals, abstract shapes. A page with the word hope in big block letters surrounded by doodles. I smiled faintly, recognizing my daughter's style: light, whimsical, the kind of drawings you'd expect from a creative teenager. But then the tone changed. Page after page, the colors darkened. The lines grew harsher, more frantic. On one page, a figure loomed over a smaller, one arm raised high. The smaller figure, Emma, I knew it was curled into a ball, shielding her head. The face of the larger figure was detailed almost too much so: the sharp cheekbones, the familiar curve of the mouth. My stomach clenched. It was Allison. My breath caught. I turned the page. Another drawing, this one of a man, tall and broad, his face obscured by a thick red X scrawled over his features. The posture, the broad shoulders. I didn't recognize him, not yet, but the rage in the drawing was unmistakable. I kept turning. There was a sketch of a hospital bed, the figure lying in it, small frail tubes and wires tangled like vines. Above the bed, in neat, almost childlike handwriting, Emma had written, "Finally quiet." I stared at those words until the letters blurred. My hands trembled as I turned to the final page. There, in her shaky, careful handwriting, Emma had written, "Mom said no one would believe me. She said Dad would think I was making it up for attention. She said if I told anyone, she'd make sure I never saw him again." The page might as well have been a knife driven straight through my chest. I felt my whole body go cold, my vision narrowing. The pieces were clicking into place, and the picture they formed made me sick. Allison hadn't just been hurting Emma physically. She'd been manipulating her emotionally, gaslighting her, isolating her. And I'd been blind to it. "Jesus Christ," I whispered under my breath, clutching the sketchbook tighter. The door creaked open. I looked up, half expecting it to be Allison, but it was someone else. Lila Grant, Emma's art teacher. She looked frazzled, hair pulled into a messy ponytail, eyes rimmed red like she hadn't slept. She hesitated in the doorway, holding her purse like a shield. "Tom," she said quietly. "I came as soon as I heard." "Is Emma?" "She's stable," I said, my voice rough. "For now." Lila stepped inside, glancing at Emma with a mix of guilt and worry. Her eyes landed on the sketchbook in my hands, and her face drained of color. "Oh God," she whispered. "Is that what I think it is?" I nodded. "Thank you all for listening to the story. If you enjoyed it, please give me a subscription." "I tried to tell someone," she said, her voice cracking. "I filed a report with the school counselor. Twice. Told them the drawing scared me, that Emma was showing signs of distress. But Allison came in, smiling, brought cookies for the staff, told them Emma was just going through a phase, stressed from school, too much pressure. Made me look like a paranoid teacher with a vendetta." Her hands twisted in her lap, her voice small. "I knew something was wrong, Tom. I should have done more. I should have pushed harder." I took a deep breath, my chest tight. "This isn't on you," I said quietly. "Allison's been covering her tracks for months, maybe longer." Lila nodded, biting her lip. I flipped the sketchbook to the page with the man's face crossed out. "Do you recognize him?" She leaned forward, squinting. Then she shook her head. "No, but I've seen Emma draw him before. A few times." She seemed angry, almost scared. I asked once, but she just shrugged it off. I closed the sketchbook slowly, a plan forming in my mind. "I need to figure out who this is," I said, standing. "And I need to make sure Allison never gets another chance to hurt my daughter." Lila looked up at me, her expression tight. "Whatever you need, Tom. I'm here. Just tell me what to do." I nodded once, gripping the sketchbook like a weapon. The war wasn't over. It was just getting started. The cold Ohio air stung my face as I stepped off the hospital's curb and into the fading afternoon light. The sky was bruised with low-gray clouds, a reflection of the storm brewing in my chest. I tightened my grip on Emma's sketchbook as if it were a lifeline, the pages still heavy with her pain. Allison was at home, probably sipping her tea and pretending everything was fine. My daughter was in a hospital bed fighting for her life, and I was out here chasing ghosts, desperate for answers. I knew where I needed to go next. Mrs. Louise Carter lived across the street from us, a retired widow, with a sharp tongue and a sharper memory. She spent most of her time on her front porch with a cup of coffee and a watchful eye on the neighborhood. She also had a state-of-the-art security system installed after a string of package thefts the year before. If anyone had seen something, and anything, it would be her. I crossed the street and knocked on her front door, my knuckles rapping against the wood harder than I intended. The sound echoed in the quiet cul-de-sac. A few seconds later, the door creaked open. Louise peered out at me, as suspicion creasing her forehead. Her floral housecoat was wrapped tight around her thin frame, and she held a steaming mug of coffee in one hand. "Well, if it isn't Tom Walker," she said, voice dry as sandpaper. "I heard about the ambulance. Everything all right over there?" "Not exactly," I said, my voice low. "Steady. Can I come in for a minute? I need your help." Her eyes narrowed sharp and assessing. "This about that poor girl of yours," I nodded, and something in my expression must have softened her edge, because she stepped back and gestured for me to enter. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and old books. Ceramic cats lined the shelves, their glass eyes glinting in the light. Louise shuffled over to her recliner and settled in, pulling a blanket over her lap. I stood awkwardly in the middle of her living room, sketchbook in hand, unsure how to start. "I'll get right to it," I said. "I need to see your security footage, specifically from the nights I wasn't home. I think someone's been in my house, someone who doesn't belong there." Her eyebrows lifted. "You think someone's been sneaking into your house at night?" "I don't just think it," I said. "I know it. But I need proof." Louise sipped her coffee, then sighed, setting it down on the side table. "All right, Tom, the system records 60 days. Let's take a look." She led me to a cluttered desk in the corner of the room where an old desktop computer hummed quietly. The monitor glowed with the security system interface timestamps lining the screen like silent witnesses. "Pull up October 15th first," I said, my pulse racing. Around 10:30 p.m., Louise clicked a few keys and the footage loaded. My stomach twisted as the image sharpened my driveway, my front porch bathed in the yellow glow of the porch light. A truck, a dark pickup I didn't recognize, pulled into the driveway. A large man climbed out, broad shoulders silhouetted against the glow. He moved to the front door, rang the bell, then reached into his pocket and used a key. My key. Sean Miller. It had to be. My fist clenched involuntarily. Louise muttered, "Well, I'll be damned." I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. Check October 18th, late night, almost midnight. She clicked through, and there he was again. Same truck, same man. This time he wasn't alone. Allison stepped outside wearing a dark hoodie, her hair tied back. They spoke in hushed tones before slipping inside together. The room seemed to shrink around me. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. Louise's hand hovered over the mouse, hesitant. "Tom, what is this?" "Just keep going," I said, my voice tight. We checked November 3rd, 2 a.m. I knew what I was looking for, but the reality still knocked the air out of my lungs. There they were, Allison and Sean, dragging something from the house to the garage. Something small, limp, wrapped in a blanket. "Emma." I felt my knees buckle. Louise put a hand on my arm, her voice trembling. "That's your daughter, isn't it?" I couldn't speak. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt, my teeth grinding together like they might crack. I nodded once, stiff and slow. Louise's face drained of color. "You need to take this to the police, Tom. Right now. I will," I said, forcing the words through a throat that felt like it was closing. "But first I need copies of all of this. Can you burn it to a disk already on it?" She said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The images kept playing, grainy but clear enough to shatter whatever illusions I might have still been clinging to. My wife, my so-called partner, the woman I'd trusted with my child. The rage simmering inside me was no longer just a flicker. It was a roaring fire. I straightened up, voice steady but cold. "Louise, thank you. I'll take it from here." Her eyes were wide, but she nodded, slipping the disc into a plastic case and handing it to me like it was a live grenade. As I stepped back out into the cold, I gripped the disc so tightly the plastic creaked. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a man with a mission. And no one, especially not Allison or Sean, was going to stop me from protecting my daughter. Not this time. The Columbus Police Department's main station sat squat and brick on a side street downtown, surrounded by a chain-link fence and a parking lot full of patrol cars. The place smelled like stale coffee and paper, the walls lined with bulletin boards full of missing persons and wanted posters. I sat across from Detective Sam Ridley in a small, windowless room. A cheap digital recorder sat between us, its red light blinking steadily. The air felt heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. Sam was in his 40s, built like an ex-football player, gone soft with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He flipped open a notepad and leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a puzzle he was starting to solve. "Start from the beginning, Tom," he said, voice calm but firm. "I need to know everything. Don't leave anything out." I took a breath and stared at the table, then at the disc sitting next to the recorder, the security footage from Louise's house. My hands trembled slightly, but I clenched them into fists on the table, grounding at myself. "Emma's been sick for months," I began, my voice hoarse. "Headaches, nausea, weight loss, confusion. We've been to doctor after doctor, and no one could figure out why. They thought it was stress or maybe a rare autoimmune thing. But then I paused, the memory sharp and jagged. 2 nights ago, I found bruises on her back, deep bruises shaped like handprints, a burn mark from a belt buckle. She was terrified, Sam. Terrified." Sam's jaw tightened. He didn't interrupt. I opened Emma's sketchbook, sliding it across the table. "She's been drawing it, everything. Her mother and him." He flipped through the pages slowly, his face growing darker with each turn. The sketch of Allison standing over Emma, the man's face crossed out in red, the words scrawled at the bottom. "Mom said no one would believe me." "Jesus," Sam muttered under his breath. "That man," I said, tapping the page with the red X. "I didn't know who he was at first, but I do now. His name's Sean Miller. He's a trainer at Iron House Gym. I got him on camera, Louise Carter's security footage. Him and Allison, coming and going from my house when I wasn't there. And then this," I slid the disc closer. Sam plugged it into a laptop and the grainy footage filled the screen. He watched in silence as Sean's truck pulled into my driveway as he let himself into my house with a key. He leaned forward when Allison appeared in the frame, her body language casual, like they were just a couple stopping by for coffee. The video from November 3rd, the one that gutted me, played last. Allison and Sean dragging Emma's limp body into the garage at 2 a.m. Sam swore quietly, running a hand through his hair. This is bad, Tom. Really bad." "No kidding," I said, my voice hard. He sat back, the wheels turning behind his eyes. "Have you confronted your wife?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I needed to come to you first. I didn't want to tip her off." Sam nodded slowly, rubbing his chin. "Smart. Look, I need to get this to the DA's office and start a case file. But Tom, this is a hell of an accusation. We'll need to bring them both in question, them separately, see who cracks first. Do you think she'll run? She's a planner," I said, my tone flat. "She'll try to talk her way out of it first. Play the perfect wife, the grieving mother. She's been doing it for months." Sam leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I've been doing this for 15 years, Tom. I can tell the difference between someone in shock and someone in damage control. Your wife. She's damage control all the way." I nodded once, tight and grim. The door opened and an officer poked his head in. "Detective Ridley, Mrs. Walker, is in the hallway. She's asking questions, wants to know if she can see her husband." Sam exchanged a glance with me, his expression sharp. "Let her wait," he said. The door closed. I exhaled slowly, a long breath that rattled in my chest. Sam looked at me, steady and calm. "We'll handle this by the book. I promise you, Tom. No one's walking away from this clean." I nodded, the tension coiling tighter in my gut. "Tom," Sam said, voice dropping low, "I've seen a lot of things in my career, but this is premeditated. Cold, systematic." He tapped the sketchbook. "She was building a case against your daughter, isolating her, gaslighting her, setting up the paper trail for months. And now with these injuries, the insurance angle, this is attempted murder." I clenched my fists so tightly my knuckles turned white. Emma's voice echoed in my head. "Please don't leave me alone with her." Sam leaned back, tapping his pen on the table. "Let me ask you something straight, Tom. Do you think your wife Allison planned to kill your daughter?" I met his eyes, cold and steady. "I think," I said quietly, "I've been married to a monster for the past 10 years. And I think she's been planning this longer than any of us realized." Sam nodded once, grim. "All right," he said, closing the file. "Let's bring her in." And outside the windowless room, behind a wall of glass, I saw Allison pacing the hallway, her face a mask of concern. Her hands folded neatly in front of her, like she was waiting for a PTA meeting, not an interrogation. She had no idea her world was about to implode. Not yet, but soon. and I'd be there to watch it happen. The Iron House gym smelled like sweat rubber mats and stale ambition. The kind of place where men grunted over barbells and flexed in mirrors where bodies were sculpted and secrets buried deep. I pushed through the glass doors and felt every eye in the place shift toward me for a split second, then away back to their sets and reps. Just another guy in a hoodie, except I wasn't. I scanned the floor, heart hammering in my chest until I spotted him. Sean Miller. He was behind the front desk, thick arms crossed over a clipboard, pretending to check off inventory. His posture was loose, but his eyes, those eyes gave him away. Flickering, darting, scanning for threats, like an animal that knew the hunter was coming. I walked straight up to the counter and leaned in, my voice low but sharp enough to cut glass. "We need to talk. Now." Sean's mouth twitched into a smile, too tight, too forced. "Hey man, looking for a membership. We've got a special going." "Cut the crap," I snapped, flipping my phone screen toward him. It was paused on the security footage, him and Allison dragging Emma into my garage like a sack of trash. The color drained from his face. "Back office. Now." He glanced around the gym, swallowed hard, and muttered something about taking a break. I followed him down a short hallway past a poster of some local bodybuilder into a cramped office that smelled like protein powder and stale sweat. He shut the door behind us. I didn't sit. "You have one chance, Sean. One. You tell me everything, or I swear to God I'll bury you so deep the cops won't even have to bother." His hands shook as he held them up, palms out, like I was holding a gun on him. "Look, man, I didn't mean for any of this. Spare me the bullshit," I barked, stepping closer. "Start talking. From the beginning." Sean sank into his chair, rubbing a hand over his face. His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. "It started 8 months ago. Allison came to the gym, said she was stressed, said Emma was acting out, that you were working too much, that she needed comfort. It was just flirting at first, man, I swear." I leaned over the desk, my hands flat on the surface, and then Sean swallowed hard. His eyes darted to the door, then back to me. Then it turned physical. And when Emma started asking questions, when she started getting suspicious, Allison said, she said the kid was dangerous, that Emma was jealous, trying to sabotage us. She told me we had to keep Emma quiet. I clenched my fist's knuckles, whitening. How I hissed. He flinched like I'd hit him. She said, she said if Emma kept pushing, she'd ruin everything, that you'd believe Emma over her. So we started, slipping her Benadryl. A lot of it, to make her sleep. Allison handled the dosing, said she'd researched it, said it was safe if we were careful. "Safe," I roared, slamming my palm on the desk so hard the cheap wood cracked. "You drugged a 15-year-old girl. You helped my wife torture my daughter." Sean's face crumpled, tears welling in his eyes. "I never touched her. I never laid a hand on her. That was all. Allison, I just helped her keep it quiet. I didn't know it would go this far." "You didn't know." My voice was a growl, now low and dangerous. "You didn't know when you helped her drag my unconscious daughter into the garage at 2 in the morning? He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I pulled out my phone again, tapped play, and let Allison's drunken voicemail fill the air. "I did it okay. I beat that little betch because she wouldn't stop talking about us. I gave her the pills, I used my hands, and I'm not sorry. She had it coming." Sean's head dropped into his hands. "I didn't know she left that message," he whispered, voice breaking. "Oh God, oh God." I shoved the phone closer to his face. "She's going to pin it all on you. You know that, right? She's already practicing her story. You're the muscle. You're the dangerous one. You think a jury's going to believe you were just helping?" His breath hitched, panic washing over his face like a wave. "Jesus, man, what do I do?" I leaned in, my voice ice cold. "You call her right now. You tell her you've got money, a plan to run, that you're ready to disappear. You set up a meeting, and when she shows up," I tapped the folder of evidence on the desk. "She walks into a trap." Sean hesitated, trembling, caught between fear and desperation. I drove it home. "Or I take all of this," I said, sweeping my hand over the files, the footage, the recordings, "and I send it to your gym, your landlord, your ex-wife, your mother. Hell, I'll post it online if I have to. I will make you infamous." Sean, the man who helped his lover torture a child. He stared at me, eyes wide breath, coming in shallow gasps. Finally, he nodded, slowly, brokenly. "I'll make the call," he whispered. I stood looming over him. "Good. Make it convincing." And Sean? He looked up, hollow and haunted. "If you so much as think about tipping her off, I will end you." His hands trembled as he picked up the phone, And as the first ring sounded, I felt the cold fire in my chest burn brighter. This wasn't over. Not yet. But it was about to be. The old sawmill on the outskirts of Columbus sat in a dead zone of forgotten industry where the road turned from asphalt to gravel and the streetlights stopped working years ago. Rusted machinery loomed in the dark like broken skeletons, their edges jagged and waiting. A single light flickered above the loading dock, casting long shadows across the cracked concrete. I crouched behind the wheel of my truck parked down the road, heart hammering in my chest as I watched through the windshield. The cold Ohio air seeped in through the cracked window, but I barely felt it. Inside my chest, the fire burned hotter than ever. Sean sat on the hood of his pickup phone pressed to his ear. His hands shook as he spoke, his voice low but urgent. I listened through the earpiece Sam Ridley had given me, the signal crackling in my ear. "Allie, it's me. Look, we have to go. Now. The cops, they're sniffing around. I've got cash. We can get out of Ohio tonight, the old mill like we talked about." Midnight, silence, then Allison's voice slithered through the line, sugary sweet and ice cold underneath. "Don't panic, Sean. We'll handle it like we always do. I'll be there." I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. She was coming. Beside me in the shadows, Detective Ridley adjusted his earpiece, whispering into the radio. "Units in position, SWAT team on standby." His face was set like stone, eyes locked on the mill. He wasn't just a cop tonight, he was a hunter, same as me. The clock ticked past midnight. A pair of headlights appeared in the distance, bouncing along the dirt road like the eyes of a predator. The car rolled to a stop, engine idling. Allison stepped out. She was dressed in black tight jeans, leather jacket, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. Her boots clicked against the pavement as she approached Sean, her face a mask of concern, but I saw the calculation in her eyes. "Where's the money?" she asked, voice low and sharp. Sean's voice wavered. "In the truck. We can leave now, just like we planned." Allison glanced around, her paranoia flickering across her face. Her hands fidgeted, clutching her purse. "Sean," she hissed, stepping closer. "Tell me the truth. Did anyone follow you?" Sean shook his head. "No. No one knows we're here." The lie hung in the air like a trap about to snap shut. I could almost feel the tension in Allison's body, her shoulders tight, her jaw clenched. She was about to bolt. Then she reached into her purse. My pulse spiked. Gun Ridley barked loud enough to make the radio crackle. Allison's hand emerged holding a small pistol. Her eyes wide and wild. "Shit," I hissed, already moving. "Police," Ridley shouted, stepping out from behind, cover weapon drawn. Red and blue lights flooded the scene, sirens screaming to life. SWAT team members swarmed from the dark like shadows with teeth, their rifles aimed, their voices commanding. "Drop the weapon," Ridley yelled, laser sight painting Allison's chest. Allison froze, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. For a split second, I thought she might surrender. Then she swung the gun toward Sean. A single shot cracked through the night. Sean's body jerked as the bullet tore through his shoulder, sending him sprawling onto the gravel with a howl of pain. I surged forward, every muscle screaming, my own voice lost in the chaos. "Allison," I roared, sprinting across the lot. She swung the gun toward me, eyes wild, teeth bared like an animal backed into a corner. "Stay back," she shrieked. I didn't. I lunged, slamming into her with the full weight of a father's rage. The gun skittered across the concrete. We tumbled, a blur of fists and fury, her nails raking my face as I pinned her down. "Tom," she screamed, spitting venom. "You think you're the hero, you're nothing. She was in the way, she was always in the way." I stared into her eyes, and for the first time I saw her clearly. Not the woman I married, not the perfect mother she pretended to be, but the monster who had tried to kill my child. I didn't say a word. The officers pried me off her, pulling me back as they cuffed her hands behind her back. She twisted, snarling, screaming my name like a curse, but I didn't flinch. Sean lay on the ground, clutching his shoulder, moaning in pain. Ridley stood over them both, voice like steel. "Allison Walker, you are under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, child abuse, and insurance fraud. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Her head snapped toward me, hair, wild eyes burning with hate. "This isn't over, Tom," she screamed. "I'll never stop. You'll never be rid of me." I stepped forward, fists clenched, voice low enough only she could hear. "You already lost. The moment you laid a hand on my daughter, you lost." Her face twisted, a mask of fury and fear, as they dragged her toward the squad car. I turned away, breath ragged, every nerve in my body thrumming with adrenaline. Ridley clapped a hand on my shoulder, solid and grounding. "It's over," he said. But as I looked back at the mill, at the blood on the ground, at the flashing lights, at the wreckage of a life I thought I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Not until Emma was safe. Not until every last piece of this nightmare was buried. The Franklin County Courthouse was packed, a buzz of whispers and the creak of old wooden benches filling the air like static before a storm. The temperature in the room felt 10 degrees too warm, the air heavy with anticipation and judgment. Every seat was filled, neighbors, reporters, even a few faces I didn't recognize, all crammed in to watch the downfall of Allison Walker. I sat in the front row, my hands clenched tight in my lap, the edges of Emma's sketchbook digging into my palms like a blade. My suit jacket felt too tight, the collar like a noose. Next to me, Emma sat with her Aunt June, her posture rigid, her face pale but determined. She wore a yellow dress, the same one she'd begged to wear for picture day last year. It looked too big on her, now hanging loose on her thin frame. I glanced at her and she gave me the smallest of nods. My daughter, the strongest person I knew. Across the courtroom, Allison sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, her hair no longer perfect, her skin pale and drawn. She looked smaller somehow, like the walls of the courtroom were closing in on her. But her eyes, those eyes were still sharp, still calculating. Sean sat on the witness stand, shoulders hunched, a sling, holding his bandaged arm. His voice trembled as he recounted everything, how Allison had orchestrated the abuse, how they'd drugged Emma, how they'd planned to stage her death as a medical emergency for the insurance payout. Every word was like a blade in my chest, but I forced myself to listen, to take it all in. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Karen Delgado, laid out the evidence like a surgeon, methodical, precise, no wasted motion. The security footage, the medical reports, the voice recordings, the emails. When the sketchbook was introduced, Emma's drawings projected on the big screen. For everyone to see, a collective shudder ran through the courtroom. The image of Allison standing over Emma, hand raised. The red X slashing across Sean's face. The words in Emma's careful handwriting, "Mom said no one would believe me." I felt Emma's small hand grip mine, her fingers trembling. Across the aisle, Allison's lawyer, a young, fresh-faced public defender, who looked like he was in way over his head, tried to mount a defense. He spun a story of stress, of mental illness, of manipulation by Sean. He pointed at me, once tried to hint that I had been distant, absent, too focused on work. But the evidence was a freight train, and no amount of cheap law school tactics could stop it. The climax came when Allison herself took the stand. Her voice was steady, at first measured, almost soft, as if she was the victim. "I did everything I could for Emma," she said, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "She was troubled, difficult. She made up stories, tried to come between me and Tom. I loved her, but she was manipulative. I was trying to protect our family." Her voice broke just slightly, as if she'd rehearsed it 100 times in front of the mirror. And then Karen Delgado hit her with the recording. The courtroom speakers crackled to life with Allison's drunken confession. "I did it okay, I beat that little bitch because she wouldn't shut up about us. I gave her those pills to keep her quiet. And when that didn't work, I used my hands. And you know what? I'm not sorry, she had it coming." A gasp rippled through the room. Allison's face went sheet white. For a moment, she looked like a cornered animal, eyes darting, breath quickening. And then the mask cracked. She twisted in the witness box, eyes locking onto me, and the venom in her voice was unmistakable. "You think you're so righteous," she hissed, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You think you're a hero. You left me to deal with everything while you were off playing soldier. Emma was always your favorite, your precious little girl, your golden child. She was tearing us apart, and you were too blind to see it." Her voice rose shrill and raw, cutting through the judge's gavel as the courtroom erupted into chaos. "I did what I had to do to protect what was mine," she screamed, eyes wild. "I did it for us." The bailiffs moved in, grabbing her arms as she thrashed her words, spitting out like poison. I stood slowly, deliberately. Every eye in the room turned toward me. I looked at her, looked at the woman I had once loved, the woman who had tried to destroy our family, and I spoke the truth out loud, clear and sharp. "She was never the problem, Allison," I said, my voice cold as steel. "You were." Emma squeezed my hand tighter, her tears silent but steady. Judge Henderson banged her gavel hard, her voice firm. Order in the court. The silence that followed was suffocating. A collective breath held. Allison slumped in the chair, shoulders shaking, her head hanging low. Judge Henderson's voice rang out sharp and final. "Allison Walker, you have been found guilty on all charges: conspiracy to commit murder, or attempted murder, aggravated child abuse, and insurance fraud. I hereby sentence you to 35 years in prison without the possibility of parole. There was a moment, a single heartbeat of silence, and then the room exhaled. I turned to Emma and she looked up at me, eyes wide and glassy, but stronger than I'd ever seen them. It's over, I whispered. Emma nodded once, a tear slipping down her cheek, but this time it wasn't fear, it was relief. The storm had passed, and we had survived. 4 months later, the lake shimmered like glass under the Ohio sun, the water catching the golden light and throwing it back in ripples that danced across the shore. I stood on the front porch of our new home, a modest two-story tucked away on a quiet stretch of a loom creek, the smell of pine and fresh-cut grass in the air. The old house, the one with all the ghosts and shadows, was gone, sold to a young couple who had no idea what had happened there. Good. Let the memories rot in those walls while we built something new. Emma stood next to me, taller now, somehow stronger. Her hair had grown out a little messy from the breeze, and there was color in her cheeks, again, real healthy color, not the sickly pallor that had haunted her in the hospital bed. She was holding a small welding torch in her hand, adjusting the angle of the metal with a focused squint. The sculpture she'd been working on for weeks stood in the front yard, 8 feet tall, gleaming under the sunlight. It was all curves and angles, a twisting, flowing shape that suggested both roots and wings. It's finished, she said, her voice steady. I nodded, swallowing hard against the lump in my throat. It's perfect, I said. And it was. Emma ran her fingers along the cool steel. The sparks of the torch long since cooled her eyes, tracing the lines like she was reading a secret language. Only she understood. She turned to me, her expression thoughtful. Dad, she asked, do you ever think about her, about what she did? I let out a slow breath, the kind that pulls up things you'd rather not touch, the courtroom. The testimonies, the look in Allison's eyes when they led her away, those moments still clung to the back of my mind like thorns. Yeah, I said honestly. I think about it. Do you regret it? Her voice was quiet, careful, like she was testing the weight of the question. I thought about that for a long moment, staring out at the lake, the water catching the last gold rays of the sun. I thought about the nights I'd sat in the hospital holding her hand and praying she'd wake up, about the rage that had driven me to rip apart the lies Allison had built, about the trap we'd set, the cold satisfaction of watching her world crumble. I regret that it had to happen, I said finally. I regret that you ever had to go through it. But I don't regret doing what I had to do to protect you. Emma nodded, slow and thoughtful, like she was filing that answer away in some quiet private place. Good, she said. Her eyes met mine, steady and unflinching. Because I'm not sorry they're gone. For a heartbeat, the air between us was still, and then she smiled, small at first, then wider, bright enough to chase the shadows back into the corners. We stood there in the quiet for a while, just the two of us, the lake lapping softly against the shore, and the wind moving through the trees. Inside the house, the walls were covered with her new art, bright, vibrant pieces that spoke of hope, of survival, of a future that wasn't defined by fear. The sketchbook, full of darkness, was packed away, stored in a box in the back of my closet. I didn't have the heart to throw it out, but we didn't need to look at it every day either. Emma glanced at the sculpture again, then back at me. You think we'll ever stop being angry? She asked. I shook my head, but I was smiling. I don't know, maybe not, but I think we'll get better at living around it, at filling the spaces with other things. Like this. She gestured at the sculpture, the house, the trees, the lake. Yeah, I said. Like this. She reached out and took my hand, fingers warm, steady, no longer trembling. Thanks for fighting for me, Dad, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Always, I said, my throat tight. Always. As the sun sank low over the water, we stood together, watching the light fade and the stars begin to blink awake. The heron that nested by the shore took off in a graceful arc, its wings catching the last golden rays before it vanished into the horizon. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt like we were going to be okay. Emma was safe. I was whole again. And the future was ours.